And so while I'm putting the opening prayers on the screen here, take several deep cleansing breaths. Let your belly fill on the in-breath. Use your diaphragm to empty completely on the out-breath. Relax any tension you're holding in your body and assume your meditation posture. Release any mental and emotional baggage from the day. You can think of it as leaving your virtual shoes at the door of our Zoom room. And bring your mind home to this time and virtual place of study and practice together. And we will do each of these opening prayers 3 times. All Mother Sentient Beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All Mother Sentient Beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All Mother Sentient Beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all Mother Sentient Beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. So before we get started with the book, I just want to ask everybody if there's any questions or comments that you want to make regarding the past couple of weeks that we've had, any things that didn't get covered or that you would like to chat about. So turn on your microphone and just speak right up. Can you take down the screen share, please?
I did. I switched to you.
Oh,
Is it still up there?
yes, it is.
Oh, hold on 1 minute.
There we go.
There we go. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so nobody has anything in particular to say. I know that Debbie had mentioned something to me. So Debbie, did you have anything, what it is that you want to discuss?
Yeah, I was just curious and would like to ask the group, have you been able to get more familiar with the 6 verses in the 10 branch prayer since our last class? And if so, how? How have you been working with it? And of course, it's fine if you haven't. Sagadaw is a very busy time. But if you have, it would be wonderful if you'd be willing to share a little bit of how you're bringing it on board a little more. I'm wondering, Sandra, have you been working with it? No? Okay.
Not particularly, no.
And by the way, if there are any reasons, if you haven't been working with it, that you think we could help with here in the class, by all means say so. If you'd like to hear something gone over again or gone into a little more deeply, for example. But what about Tom? Have you been able to?
Very, very busy this past week with Sagadawa, actually, every day. So yes, I would love to get more into it, and I this opportunity that we have on Friday nights, it's really opening my eyes to a lot of different things, and things that I really didn't expect, and things that I'm looking forward to.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Hi. I'm actually having trouble understanding how to get into it. So perhaps we could just talk a little about that.
Sure. And what I am doing, and others can share what they're doing, I'm just literally reciting these prayers as we study them, adding them into what I'm doing in my daily practice, and going through them a little slowly so that I can pause after each of the 6 verses and just look back over and kind of check, what parts do I understand? Where may I need to think about it more, just rest with it more, maybe do a little more study or ask questions here. Nothing very magical there, maybe not that helpful. Anybody else have something to share about how to work with it? And is there a way in particular you're having difficulty doing it?
No, just having a difficult time in my life and not having a lot of imagination for how to get started. But what you said was helpful. I do also have a smaller practical question. In the 10 branch prayer, at one point we're supposed to rejoice and summon. And Lance talked about using the different instruments, but I'm thinking if you don't have the instruments, which I don't, what should we do?
We're imagining that we do have the instruments and just simply the drum, and just using our three fingers like this and our thumb and our little fingers together and just beating on the drum. So, I think the key word you did say here was imagination. So what we're doing is we're visualizing a lot of things. So we have to, through practice over and over again, do we recall that, and it becomes more and more meaningful, and maybe at some point there becomes an opening. There becomes a window that we open up, a door we walk through, some kind of an epiphany that we have. But don't despair, keep working at it. That's why it's called a practice.
Does anyone else have something they'd like to add or share? Then if not, I have one other question that I wanted to put out there, because I think people can very reasonably answer this very differently. So I thought it would be fun to ask. When you're studying this text or any other special text, do you think it's okay to make notes and mark up in the book or in the Pesha? How do you feel about that? What do you do or not do?
I use pencil. Makes me feel better.
I always thought it was kind of bad to do, because, just how we're kind of instructed to be careful and treat these things with respect. But I saw a Tuchel's, I've seen other people write on stuff, and it just opened it up for me. Like, no, it's okay. I think it's okay.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I have taken notes in other books that we have, but on this one, I just regard it differently, that I don't want to write on it, and I have paper that I'm making my notes on.
Anyone else? This is great. Yes, Louisa.
When I'm reading, I don't write in the Pesha book because I see it as a sacred book. And so I make little notes on a notebook that I have especially for a class. If they're just ordinary books, I'll usually write on them, or I highlight something that I want to remember, but not in this book. No.
A wonderful variety of opinions. Yes.
Yeah, I have seen where one of the masters has written in his book, and that pretty much got me away from all this. The difference between the holy and the secular, it kind of all comes together when you're using some of these books. And I find that if I write on a different sheet of paper than on the book, at the place in the book, I lose my place.
Use the paper.
Yeah,
Anyone
aren't
else?
your
Yes,
notes,
Jane,
let
I
me
think
ask the
Jane.
question. Aren't your notes Dharma as well? I mean, they're pertaining to whatever the book is explaining for us. So your notes are pertaining directly to that. So I view it as that there's no conflict of it being non-virtuous or anything like that. If you feel like you want to have a pure copy, I know some people will have one copy that they take their notes in and so on, and they study, but then another copy that they keep. And maybe they wind up sharing that with other people because it's a fresh copy. And then maybe they refresh that, get a new one, so it's available for somebody else down the road. Actually, it was Debbie who told me that.
Jane, you wanted to say something.
Yes. Right now I haven't written in the Pesha text because I feel like it's a sacred text and I wanted to keep it looking as beautiful as the day I received it. But in other books, in lieu of writing in them, because I don't like rooting the books with words in them, although maybe one day I will. I put sticky notes in them, and I'll mark off passages with sticky notes or write things on the sticky notes, and I can get everything that I want and find things quickly because I'll put the sticky note sticking out like a little bookmark. So far that's working for me. And I have some that look like skinny sticky notes, like little bookmarks. So they're different sizes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's working for me.
Interesting.
Maybe that would work for someone else.
Yeah, thank you.
And we were told to make the corrections that we needed to on page 126 and 214 by adding the corrected text into the book. So I figured that's an invitation to do so. If I had it anywhere else besides in the Pesha, yeah, I wouldn't have it at access as I'm turning the pages.
Aileen, did you want to say something? Need to unmute yourself. Oops, we still can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a notebook that I take notes for all my Dharma, for all the Dharma teaching. And for the prayer book, some of the mantra that I recite and I don't understand, and the teacher explained it. So I do write what it means on the prayer book. So I hope it's okay to write something on it, right? If we don't understand what we're reciting in Tibetan, like the mantra, like increasing mantras or the Sanskrit alphabet mantra that I'm reciting, and what are we supposed to visualize when we recite it? So I take some notes. I put some note because if I put in a separate notebook, I might not be able to go back to the notebook to trace back what it means. So, right, Lance? We can write something on it, on the prayer book, Lance?
I think so. I mean, I do. I'm not, I don't feel that we shouldn't. Like I said, it's all Dharma. And so I've never heard anybody say to me that we can't do it. I've never heard a Lama say to me that we can't do it. I think it's been the Western people who have fabricated this kind of an idea. And I've seen books that the monastics have, and they've got notes in their books. So I don't hesitate to do it. And I think it makes me a better student by being able to do it. I'm not struggling looking for note paper in between pages that I made a reference to. And so it helps me to recall. If I feel like I've satisfied it, I can erase it with a pencil and maybe I don't need it anymore. But so I do write in pencil.
I write in pencil too. Thank you.
Yes.
And we're taught it's all about motivation. It's not as if we're talking here about writing down our shopping list or somebody's phone number.
Exactly.
This is all about studying and becoming better practitioners. So that would seem to be in a category of its own. Anyone else? Well, that was a lovely discussion. Don't want to cut it off, but Lance, you probably want to move ahead for the evening.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Yes, thanks for that. And if anybody has any more thoughts about it, wants to discuss it, we can make time to do that. But in the meantime, let's move on. And so to get ourselves, into the stream of consciousness, I think it's important to read the opening prayers again, or read the 4 daily prayers. So today what we're going to do is read the root verses of the 6 intermediate states on page 1 and go through that, and then continue on through the 10 branch prayer, the 10 branch prayer for accumulation of merit on page 7. So we're going to go through that, and then at the end of that, then we're going to discuss page 14, the purification of the natural liberation of habitual tendencies. And then after that, then we're going to go to the 3rd of the daily prayers, rescuing in the dangerous pathway. So we'll get to talk about 3 of the opening or the daily prayers today. So if we can, if you can remember, I'm going to ask the group to read a particular page. So it's a short page, page number 1. So I'll read that. Louisa, would you read page 2 then, please? And Tom, would you read page 3? And then page 4, would Jerry read that, please? And Jane, you read page 5. And page 6 is Ezra. Can you read tonight, Ezra? We see your camera's off, but if you can read, that'd be great.
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Then page 7 and 8, if Sandra would read page 7 and 8. And then Eileen, would you read page 9? And then Vajra family, that's Barbara. Would you read page 10? And I'm sorry, I can't think of his name. Your husband, is he there with you tonight, Barbara?
No, he's working tonight.
Okay, what's his name again?
Robert.
Robert, of course. Okay. All right. So Barbara's going to read page 10. Bhavani, will you read page 11? And page 12 will be William. And then page 13 would be Joanna. And then and that would take care of that for tonight. And then we'll continue on with the next part as we get to that. So let's begin on page 1 by reciting the 6 intermediate states. So remember that the 6 intermediate states are the 6 realms of being a human being. It's part of our psychophysical drama that we are in these 6 realms. So calling these to our memory, recalling this is very important to remember that we are subject to these 6 realms simultaneously. And that the 10 branches are like a tree on which our practices are hung. So they're the different branches of the tree. So recalling those 10 branches of our practice is very important. So, so I'm going to read page 1 and then we'll continue on. So this is the root verses of the 6 intermediate states. According to this cycle of teachings, the cycle of birth and death can be seen as being composed of 6 intermediate states. These 6 modalities of existence are awaking living state, dreaming, meditation, the time of death, and the 2 successive phases of the after-death state are defined in the glossary. This poem emphasizes the centrally important perspective that relates to each of these states. It is recommended that practitioners should memorize these verses and recite them repeatedly while reflecting on their meaning throughout their lives. I bow down to the conquerors, the peaceful and wrathful deities. Alas now, as the intermediate state of living arises before me, renouncing laziness for which there is no time in this life, I must enter the undistracted path of study, reflection, and meditation, taking perceptual experience and the nature of mind as the path. Who is reading page 2?
Sorry, I had the audio turned off. I must cultivate actualization of the three Buddha bodies, now having obtained a precious human body this one time. I do not have the luxury of remaining on a distracted path. At last, now, as the intermediate state of dreams arises before me, renouncing the corpse-like insensitive sleep of delusion, I must enter free from distracting memories, the state of the abiding nature of reality, cultivating the experience of inner radiance through the recognition, emanation, and transformation of dreams. I must not sleep like a beast, but cherish the experience cultivation which mingles sleep with actual realization.
Alas, now as the intermediate state of meditative concentration arises before me, renouncing the mass of distractions and confusions, I must undistractedly enter a state which is devoid of subjective apprehension and free from the two extremes, and attain stability in the stages of generation and perfection. At this moment, having renounced activities, having attained a singular concentration, I must not fall under the sway of bewildering mental afflictions. Alas, now as the intermediate state of the time of death arises before me, renouncing all attachments, yearning, and subjective apprehension in every aspect, I must undistractedly enter the path on which the oral teachings are clearly understood.
And eject my own awareness into the uncreated expanse of space. Immediately upon separation from this compounded body of flesh and blood, I must know this body to be like a transient illusion. Alas, now as the intermediate state of reality arises before me, renouncing the merest sense of awe, terror, or fear, I must recognize all that arises to be awareness, manifesting naturally of itself. Know such sounds, lights, and rays to be visionary phenomena of the intermediate state. At this moment, having reached this critical point, I must not fear the assembly of peaceful and wrathful deities which manifest naturally.
Alas, now as the intermediate state of rebirth arises before me, I must with one pointed intention concentrate my mind and resolutely connect with the residual potency of my virtuous past actions. I must obstruct the womb entrance and call to mind the methods of reversal. This is the time when perseverance and purity of perception are imperative. I must give up all jealousy and meditate on my spiritual teacher with consort.
From the mouth of the accomplished masters come these words. Oh, you with your mind far away, thinking death will not come, entranced in pointless activities of this life. If you were to return empty-handed now, would not your life's purpose have been utterly confused? Recognize what it is that you truly need. It is a sacred teaching for liberation. So, should you not practice this divine, sacred teaching, beginning from this very moment? And it is also said, if I choose not to take the oral teachings of the spiritual teacher to heart, am I not the deceiver of myself?
I think Sandra's next, and you need to turn your microphone on, please.
Oh. Visualize in the space before you the three precious jewels and the deities of the 100 enlightened families, and then recite as follows. The branch of taking refuge. Om Ahum. I respectfully take refuge inseparably from now until enlightenment in the infinitude of peaceful and wrathful deities, the conquerors gone to bliss, the three precious jewels, the meditational deities, the ocean of Dakinis, and the assembly of oath-bound protectors within the infinite Buddha fields reaching to the limits of space.
The branch of invitation. Invitation. I request the infinite, peaceful, and wrathful deities of the 10 directions and 4 times, compassionate animations, embodying discriminative awareness and skillful means, pervading the vast infinite space of reality's expanse, to come to this place for the sake of all living beings. The branch of requesting the deities. The branch of requesting the deities to be seated. I request that the meditational deities be seated here on sun, moon, and lotus cushions, symbolizing skillful means, discriminative awareness, and their stainless union. Upon their jewel thorns, fashioned in the form of lions and so forth, in an attitude of unblemished supreme delight. Within this mandala of pristine cognition, which is the natural purity of phenomenal existence.
The branch of paying homage. I bow down to the assembly of the peaceful and wrathful conquerors, to the Father and Mother deities and all their offsprings, whose essence is the pristine cognition of Samantabhadra, displayed as uncorrupted bliss in the secret womb of Samantabhadri, the branch of making offerings. I request the peaceful and wrathful conquerors, the oceans of those gone to bliss, to partake of these inestimable outer, inner, and secret offerings, both those actually arrayed and those mentally emanated, which are offered for the benefit of all beings.
The branch of the confession of negativity. I acknowledge and remorsefully confess all my negative obscurations and all my habitual tendencies of body, speech, and mind, beginninglessly influenced by the 3 poisons, which are the accumulation causes for rebirth, among the lower states of suffering and cyclic existence. The branch of sympathetic rejoicing. I rejoice with great delight in the Buddha fields of supreme bliss, where all phenomenal existence is recognized as the perversion of reality's expanse. I rejoice in all compassionate acts, in their merits and in their altruistic intention, and in all deeds that are the source of merit and pristine cognition.
The branch of turning the wheel of the sacred teachings. I exhort the teachers throughout the fields of the 10 directions, who are as numerous as atoms, to stir from their meditative commitments for the sakes of all sentient beings, and to turn the wheel of the sacred teachings, thus entirely pervading the reaches of space. The branch of requesting the Buddhas not to enter nirvana. I beseech you O teachers of infinite Buddhas without exception, to remain present and not to pass into pan-nirvana, and to continue to exact deeds of extensive benefit for the sake of beings until the world systems of cyclic existence have been emptied.
The branch is a dedication of merit to the unsurpassed greater vehicle. By the power of whatever past, present, and future virtues I accumulate, may all sentient beings throughout the furthest reaches of space mature into worthy recipients of the unsurpassed greater vehicle, and then swiftly attain the status of the infinite, peaceful, and wrathful deities. As the 10 branch prayer is concluded, the Lama visualizes that all the objects of refuge melt into light and then gradually dissolve into the crowns of each of the attending persons, including the dying person and himself.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we come to page 14, and this is part of the natural liberation of habitual tendencies. So what we just recited, the 10 branch prayer, was visualizing the tree, so to speak, the branches of the habitual tendencies. And now we're looking at the purification of that, our purification, to be part of that tree, to be that tree, that we become the tree. So this mantra is the first thing that we recite here. So this is Om Ahom, Bodhicitta, Mahasukha, Jana Datu Ah, Om, Rulu Rulu Hong, Jo Hong. Now I know it says B-O, B-H-Y-O-H in that second line, but it's actually pronounced Jo. So it's one of the idiosyncrasies for me, being a Westerner trying to understand the Tibetan language. So maybe somebody will explain it to me one day, but that's the way it's pronounced, is Jo. So the translation for that Sanskrit prayer, that mantra, is in the small text there to the right. It says, it is the unified intention of the body, speech, and mind of the 42 peaceful and 58 wrathful deities of the great Buddha field that displays the wisdom that cuts through all ignorance to manifest their wisdom for the benefit of the enlightenment of all sentient beings. So that's a very powerful statement. So we're studying, or we're about to study, the 100 deities of the Bardo Thödol. So there's the 48 wrathful, 48 peaceful, and or the 42 peaceful, and the 58 wrathful, 100 deities. And so here it's broken down for us to say that all of them, regardless of their activity, what their specific activity is, it's all for the benefit of the enlightenment of sentient beings. So it's a powerful thing. And so we would recite this one time or two times or three times, whatever you're comfortable with. So Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Jana Datu Ah Om Rulu Rulu Hong Jo Hom. So if we can recite this 11 times together, so this would be very helpful. So you can turn off your microphone so we don't have feedback. I'll lead this. And it's a chanting. Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Jana Datu Ah Om Rulu Rulu Hong Ryo Hong. Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Jana Datu Ah Om Rulu Rulu Hong Jo Hong. Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Jana Datu Ah Om Rulu Rulu Hong Jo Om. Om Ahom bodhicitta, mahasukha, jana dhatu, om, rulu, rulu, hong, jo, hong. Om, hong, bodhicitta, mahasukha, jana dhatu, om, rulu, rulu, hong, jo, hong. Om, hong, bodhicitta, mahasukha, jana dhatu, om, rulu, rulu, hong, jo, hong. Om, hong, bodhicitta, mahasukha, jana dhatu, om, rulu, rulu, hong, jo, hong. Om, hong, bodhicitta, mahasukha, jana dhatu, om, rulu, rulu, hong, jo, hong. Om, hong, bodhicitta, mahasukha, jana dhatu, om, rulu, rulu, hong, jo, hong. Om, hong, bodhicitta, mahasukha, jana dhatu, om, rulu, rulu, hong, jo, hong. Om, hong, bodhicitta, mahasukha, jana dhatu, om, rulu, rulu, hong, jo, hong. Okay, thank you. So reciting the Sanskrit is very, very, very important. We are evoking the language that this was taught in. The Buddha and his contemporaries at that time, they taught in the Sanskrit language. It was later written down in the Pali language, but they taught in the Sanskrit language and they memorized all these prayers and all these teachings in the Sanskrit. So when we are reciting these Sanskrit mantras, we are evoking that vibration that has never died, because anything that has ever happened is happening right now. And anything that's ever going to happen in the future is happening right now. So there's a timelessness to this. And there's an omnipresence of this. No matter where we are, what part of the earth that we happen to be in, it's all the same. And even beyond our solar system and out through all of creation, it's all part of this phenomenal nature that we are all part of, this display of the Dharmakaya, of the true nature. So by harmonizing along with these Sanskrit mantras is our connection to that. We intellectually try and understand what this means through the translations and all the different languages and so on like that. And those translations are very helpful to help us connect to what is being said here. However, it is the vibrational quality of reciting these Sanskrit mantras that really brings us our body, speech, and mind together. Our body, our physical body, our vocal cords, our lungs, the air that we breathe, and everything that's generating this sound. The intellect, the speech, the intellect of the meaning of what this is, are both like keys that open up our heart center, open up our spirituality, open up our spiritual center, our spiritual body. So our physical body, our intellectual body are the keys that open up through the vibration of harmonizing with these mantras. So it's very, very important. We vicariously learn the meaning of these mantras through our translation, but we experience these mantras through the recitation of the mantra. And it shouldn't be limited to 11 times or 21 times or 101 times or 108 times. It should be unlimited. And when we have the time to do these, particularly when we're learning these and we get more comfortable in these practices and we have time to do it, to do a mile around, to do maybe 2 mile rounds or 3 mile rounds until we feel like we have reached a point where we're having some kind of an experience. And it becomes transformative. That's what this is based on. Remember, what we are trying to recognize is non-conceptual. It can only be experienced. It can't be intellectually comprehended. We point the direction of that through our intellectualization, but the actual experience comes from our three bodies all coming together and then having that transcendent experience that is guided by the mantras. So it's very important. Anybody have any comments about that? Any experiences about that you'd like to share?
Lance, I would like to ask a Lama more about this mantra. I don't know if Kempo, I don't know who the right Lama is, but I think I heard in a different lineage, that this mantra sort of sums up the whole Bardo, like the whole text, like practicing this mantra.
Well, didn't it do that? What was that English translation?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think you get that feeling if you only say it, if you think, you're supposed to just say it 1 to 3 times or something, like.
No, I just
You know what I
said
mean?
you should recite it until you have that experience.
Yes, I know. I'm just trying to echo that. Like, I think it's really important. Yeah. I'd like to know more about it.
Okay. Experience it. All this wisdom is locked within ourselves and it's all blocked up. And we have the opportunity to open up these things to purify ourselves. And this wisdom comes up. The lamas, all these, our brothers and sisters, are pointing into a direction for us. But until we have that experience ourselves, it just remains vicarious experience. It's just knowledge that we're borrowing from somebody else. So we have that ability, we have that power. Practice is the key to all of this.
How did you end up with 11? I'm familiar with 1, 3, 7, 21.
It's odd numbers. Odd numbers, just so that it's an odd number. So that's how I do it. So I'm sharing that with you. You can do whatever you like. Okay, so now we go to the body of this text here, where it says now, from the field of reality's expanse, uncreated and pure, within a celestial palace, which is a seminal point of light, pure, unceasing, and radiant, through the natural expressive power of one's own mind, uncontrived and empty. Intrinsic awareness, radiant and empty, arises in the form of Vajrasattva. Seated upon a bejeweled throne, adorned with lotus, sun, and moon cushions. The right hand holds a Vajra at the heart, symbolizing the union of awareness of absolute wisdom and emptiness. The left hand supports a bell resting on the hip, symbolizing the union of wisdom appearances and emptiness. And the head is adorned with a garland of perfect Buddhas, representing the 5 enlightened families of those gone to bliss. Thus, Vajrasattva manifests in the form of the Buddha body of perfect resource, exquisitely adorned with silks and jewels, seated in the posture of royal ease, with the right leg extended and the left drawn in. Radiating at the heart is the seed syllable hum, surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra. So now we go back and we talk about this. So each line, from the field of reality's expanse, uncreated and pure, within a celestial palace, which is a seminal point of light, pure, unceasing, and radiant, through the natural expressive power of one's own mind, uncontrived and empty. Intrinsic awareness, radiant and empty, arises in the form of Vajrasattva. So we're visualizing this Dharma Dhatu. as much as we can visualize this Dharma Dhatu, this pure nature, the true nature, and the seminal point of light that then issues forth this display that we are part of in this phenomenal existence. So there is that uncreated expanse from which we come, that we have to experience. It's non-conceptual, but we do experience that display. And we have all these appearances, and we have all these names, we have all these connotations, we have all these conventions of what we call all this. This is the relative. And the Dharma Dhatu is the Dharmakaya, the Dharma Dhatu is the unborn nature. So, yes, sir.
May I ask about line 2? Am I to understand that the celestial palace is the seminal point of light, so that all of that's happening within the celestial palace is actually happening in a I don't know how to say it, in a space without space, in a space without dimension?
Well, that's the way it's being translated here.
Okay.
So it says within a celestial palace, which is a seminal point of light, pure, unceasing, and radiant. So this to me is not unlike the womb that is giving birth. This seminal point of light, this celestial palace, is like the Big Bang, is one visualization I have for it. We use all these similes and so on to explain these things. So to me, it's like that Big Bang, before there seems to be nothing but space. But then all of a sudden there's this event, and the celestial palace just opens up and reveals itself as this display. So it's a mind blower.
Yeah, it's powerful. I want to make sure that I'm understanding that the celestial palace doesn't emanate from the point of light, doesn't unfold from the point of light, but actually is the point of light.
Is the point of light. The way I interpret this, it says within, which is a seminal point of light, unceasing and radiant. So the phenomenal nature is said to be unceasing, no beginning, no end.
Lance, could the mind mandala be another synonym for the celestial palace? The mind mandala.
Absolutely.
Chakra.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All these contrived concepts that we as human beings fabricate to try and wrap our minds around this are all valid. But always to remember that they are conceptual.
So it could be the squirrel dray in the tree outside my house.
Another good simile, yes.
Okay.
It's good to have a sense of humor about it too. So through the natural expressive power of one's own mind, uncontrived and empty, intrinsic awareness, radiant and empty, arises in the form of Vajrasattva. So when we can transcend our human nature and have that Vajrasattva experience, recognize Vajrasattva within ourselves, then this is the persona, if you will, if I can use that word. This is the persona that we travel through the Bardo Thödol as Vajrasattva, the one who purifies themselves. Now, to whatever degree we may be purified, is to whatever degree we are the embodiment of Vajrasattva. So saying that we our Vajrasattva doesn't mean that we are completely Vajrasattva, but we are recognizing ourselves on that path of purification, which Vajrasattva symbolizes that purification process. So through this, you'll see references to the Vajrasattva in this way, that he becomes the traveler, he becomes the migrator, or we are seeking to be the embodiment of Vajrasattva, ever more purified, to get to, when we get to the Bardo of reality, to be able to be transcendent and not to leave the Bardo, to become the Bardo. So now we do have a visualization for Vajrasattva. So you see on the left side of the paper here, and I'm going to screen share this if I can, if this works. Let me see here just a moment. Well, here is Vajrasattva. So here he's got a white body, you can see that. And he's got the headdress. He is a Sambhogagaya form. He is a meditational deity with a white body. His right hand is holding the Vajra at the heart, which represents skillful means, which represents indestructible wisdom, skillful means. And in his left hand, he's holding the Ganta, the bell in Sanskrit, or the Dilbu, the bell in Sanskrit, at his right hip, with the bell upwards. So the bell represents the feminine wisdom, and the Vajra, the Dorje, represents the masculine skillful means. And in this illustration, both his legs are crossed. But as it's explained here, the right leg is extended in the same way that Green Tar's right leg is extended. You may have seen that. And let me see if I have a picture of that. No, this one is the same thing. So I'll make a picture. So Vajrasattva then is seated in this position, so we can recognize this. And here is, his holiness and the halo around him and so on. He's on a moon disc sitting on the lotus pedestal, showing that he is a peaceful deity that is part of the Sambhogagaya. And he
Lance,
has
the picture on the left of page 14 has the leg extended.
Yes, I don't have that handy.
For those who have the Pesha.
Yeah. So another image of Vajrasattva is called the Shitro image of Vajrasattva. So maybe you all have seen this, maybe not. This is a very sacred, holy illustration here. And here you see Vajrasattva in the classic position with his white body and so on. In his heart center are the peaceful deities, the 42 peaceful deities in his heart center. In his throat are the 10 are the 10 Vidyadhara, the hero awareness holders are at his throat, which represents the mind, which represents the habitual tendencies, I should say, of the mind. And then here at his crown, within his brain, within his skull, are the 58 wrathful deities. So the wrathful deities are emanations of the peaceful deities. When the peaceful deities and their activity of pacifying and of increasing knowledge, increasing understanding, increasing experience is not satisfactory enough to be able to overcome non-virtue, then here where the emotions are generated is the 58 wrathful deities of the brain, of the mind, and so on. So when we go further into studying the Bardo, we'll understand this, but this image should stay with you. This heart center here is the purification of the emotion, afflictive emotion obscurations. The obscurations of afflictive emotions are purified here, are perfected here in the heart. The emotions are generated in the brain. And so what is being dealt with here in the brain is excuse me one second, are the mental misconceptions, all the misinterpretations that we go through, that we embody, that we live, that we every day deal with as what we call this reality, which we have come to understand and maybe experienced as emptiness. But here, these 58 wrathful deities, they are working with those mental misconceptions to purify those mental misconceptions. When they are purified, then they are then we're able to enter into the heart center and overcome those emotional, the emotional afflictions, the afflictive emotions in the heart center, and perfect them. In the throat, our speech, our activities of the brain, activities of the intellect, are these hero awareness holders, the Vidyadhara. And it's through them that we reveal our habitual tendencies. We think that we have purified so much up here in the brain. We think we have purified so much in the heart, that we have done so much work. But then through our actions and through our speech, if we're paying attention, we listen to ourselves, we reveal to ourselves and to everybody else that hears us what our habitual tendencies are that have not been purified yet. Or that maybe they have been purified and you're seeing your habitual tendencies now have been purified to the part that they are all virtue, that they are all worthy of becoming Buddha, of becoming Bodhisattva, and so on. So it's through the speech, through the actions here, that we recognize that dualism, because this is all in the Sambhogagaya state. So this is all within our dualistic nature. Here we see that here is a yogi, here is a practitioner, much like us in one degree or another, who is now visualizing the 5 Buddha families as Vajrasattva. So this is how we develop our practice, through these visualizations with what we have, the working basis of what we have, our phenomenal nature, our being a phenomenal being in the phenomenal nature. This is what we have to work in. And so we begin to develop these practices to be able to transcend those bonds, those connection points that we attach to or that we have aversions to here in this phenomenal nature. So the Bardo Thödol is illustrating all of this for us so that we can recognize what our work is, that we see what this is. So are there any questions or comments about this?
I have a question
Sure.
about the Vajradhara.
Yes.
You said, could you possibly go over that again? As I want to make sure I got everything, and I can do research after class. But it's
Vajradhara or Vajrasattva?
The center throat, 10 heroes.
The Vidyadhara.
Vidyadhara.
The
See, that's why I
Vidyadhara,
wanted to ask
the
about
hero
it.
awareness holders. And we're going to go into a lot of discussion about that in subsequent meetings here with the Bardo Thödol. So here I'm introducing it to you. So we don't have time to be able to go into the elucidation of that until we get to that particular part of the teaching. So here it's something to, as a, if I can use the word, it's a teaser to say that we are moving in a direction of understanding these things and within ourselves so that we can practice these concepts to be able to liberate ourselves from these concepts. So have patience with us.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your patience with me.
I know you do. I know you do. And I'm not trying to keep anybody from speaking up, but I'm just trying to give it a context. You know, I like to read the table of contents before I read the book, you know, to understand all the subsequent things that I'm going to do. A lot of us, and I'm guilty of this too, I would go right to the middle of the book and say, oh, I don't need the early chapters. Or worse yet, I would go to the last chapter or maybe even the last page and read that and say, well, I got this sussed out. I know that. I don't have to read the book. You know, but so my point in saying that is I like to be able to give everybody a context of where we're going. So this Vajrasattva is where we are going. And these three points of Vajrasattva are to be recognized. So it's with this. So we're doing this in the beginning of the reading of the text. So we're purifying our motivation to engage in this study and reading of the text. Remember, if we're sitting down in front of someone who is dying or has just died, we want to be as pure as we possibly can, so that we're not leaking in any of our biases and skews and misinformation, confused mental conceptions, and so on like that. So we need to do that in the very beginning. So we recite this mantra that we just said, you know, visualizing the 42 peaceful and 58 wrathful deities, and that they are all part of, you know, the body of the Buddha. They are all part of the body of the Buddha, there to bring their wisdom in order that all beings may be liberated, find enlightenment. So now we come to this part here in this text. So the right hand, so we just went through the description of the Buddha and so on. So so now this last stanza here, it says, thus Vajrasattva manifests in the form of the Buddha body of perfect resource. The Buddha body of perfect resource is the Sambhogagaya. You all are familiar with that, I suppose. The Sambhogagaya, the subtle enjoyment body, which is part of the relative manifestation of the Dharmakaya, which is non-conceptual. But for our benefit, to attain enlightenment, it appears. It appears within our brain, within our meditation. This is where all the meditational deities are and so on. And the emanation body is the Nirmanakaya, the teachers that come, that are emanations of that Dharmakaya, at least for the time that they are on the cushion in front of us giving teachings. At least for that time, and maybe they become the perfect embodiment of that, so that we can hear these things, we can see these things, we can begin to understand these things that are of the phenomenal nature, that we can begin to learn to be able to transcend to the Sambhogagaya and then transcend to the Dharmakaya. So Buddha body, a perfect resource, is the Sambhogakaya, the resources of our enlightenment. The resources of our enlightenment. Enlightenment, it may sound like it just happens with an epiphany, but we have to work for it. We have to develop it. We have to cultivate it. We have to go through many, 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 many mind trainings and perfections to get there. You may be familiar or heard the stories of those who attain this in one lifetime. Shakyamuni Buddha, for instance. But what we don't know, what we don't see, what we don't hear about are all the prior lifetimes that Shakyamuni Buddha went through to get to the point to, in his lifetime, he attained enlightenment, or to Milarepa, or to Nagarjuna, or to Lord Jigdan Sumgun, or to Ratnasambhava, or to Pamasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, so many other deities that we talk about, or beings who have become Tathagatas, thus gone ones.
I have a question about
Sure.
this Sambhogakaya. Is that also called the enjoyment body?
The Sambhogakaya, yes, the subtle enjoyment body.
So to me, that sounds very tantric.
Of course.
Of enjoying, the beautiful, sensual, cosmic happiness.
Bliss and emptiness.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
I was reading Robert Thurman, and he used the word beatific for this level, which recalls the idea of the beatific vision in the West.
Yeah, he's very intellectual. Exquisitely adorned with the silks and jewels, seated in the posture of royal ease with the right leg extended, ready to jump up, to come for all beings, to like green tars, ready to jump up. And the left drawn in, showing, the stability in the Dharmakaya. And radiating at the heart is the seed syllable hum, surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra. So on the right side of this page is a stylized hung syllable. So, and sitting on a white moon disk, which is on top of a sun disk, a yellow sun disk. You don't see that in this illustration. You may see a little bit of a band at it. If you look really, really closely, you see a yellow band because they always are there. But sometimes in the illustration, you may only see one or the other. The moon disk, the white moon disk, is the disk that the peaceful deities are sitting on. The wrathful deities are standing on the powerful sun disk, which is yellow, and then the moon disk would be below it. On the moon disk, the peaceful deities, the sun disk is below the moon disk. So the sun is very hot. So the wisdom fire, the wisdom heat, and then the moon is the cooling of that heat, the compassion of that wisdom. And then both of those are on a lotus pedestal. The lotus pedestal connotating that they are coming from this relative existence, the ocean of suffering. They are transcending this ocean of suffering that the lotus flower is symbolic of. So I'm sure you all know about that from the bottom of a body of water, a slow-moving body of water, from this filth and this mud, this muck and everything, comes there's this seed that sprouts, and the stem comes and breaks through the ocean of suffering that is symbolic of what this stagnant pond is. And in the open atmosphere, now this beautiful, pure lotus flower blossoms. So it represents our purity that comes from our defilements. So this is a broad statement to say that all of us in samsara all of us in nirvana emerge from this. So then we visualize that, and then we recite the familiar 100 syllable mantra. So we'll recite this 3 times. We'll do it with melody. So we recite this 3 times, page 15 and 16. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Jistadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarata Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manubalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Jista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarata Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwa ha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Jista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarata Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Satwaha. Okay, so that is the purification part of the natural liberation of habitual tendencies. So we just talked about the habitual tendencies being those things that reveal to ourselves and to all others what has been purified or what needs to be purified. All right, so this next part here, this main practice, becomes part of the daily practice that we are going to come back to later on. So we are going to move ahead to the actual book of the Bardo Thödol, and then at the end of all that, then we're going to come back to this main practice, which would be a daily practice for ourselves to familiarize ourselves with this, to continually familiarize ourselves with this. If there's only one book that we have, this might be one of those books. The Jewel Ornament of Liberation, other people have said. There's many other books that people have said if they only had one book. But this is one of those one books that we might want to have because it is so profound in what it means to us in understanding our relationship to the Dharma and our relationship to liberation. Any questions or comments? Okay, then we go to page 207, because now we're going to go to the third of the daily prayers that we are requested by Padmasambhava requested by Padmasambhava to memorize and to recite every day. So this is the aspirational prayer, which rescues from the dangerous pathways of the intermediate states. So this is going to bring some new questions, I'm sure. I don't know if we'll be able to really suss out this whole prayer, but it's the kind of thing that we're going to come back to over and over again. So if we go through this and not answer every question or find that there's new questions come, we can always refer back to this. So tonight we want to recite this. So what I would like to do is to ask, so this goes to page 213. So I'm going to ask, let me see, where did we leave off before? I think we left off. All right, Curtis, will you recite page 207? And Gary, will you recite page 208? And Kate, will you recite page 209?
Lance, I'm confused.
Why?
Page 207, did I lose track of something?
207. We're in the Bardo Thödol book.
Okay, forgive me, I'm sorry, I don't know what.
So we're skipping now to the end of the book so that we can understand the daily prayers that Padmasambhava has asked us to recite.
Okay, bear with me, let me see what I've done here. I've separated my books.
Oh, too bad.
I can find it if you'll just give me, want me to read page 207, is that correct?
Yes.
I'll see what I've done. I'm sorry. Oh my. Okay, I have 207.
You got 207?
Yes, I'll reorganize the rest of this later.
Well, Curtis was going to read 207. Okay. I was asking you to read 208.
208?
Yes.
Okay, I've got it.
All right, Kate, will you recite 209, please? Michael, will you recite page 210, please? Adrian, will you recite page 211, please? John, will you recite page 212, please? Dan, will you recite 213, please? And I'm sorry, Gail, we run out of pages for tonight. We'll pick it up next time, but okay.
Yeah, that's lucky because I have your book that you sent me, with the beautiful pages, and I have your PowerPoint, so I'm a little confused. Is this another book that you put on when you first announced the study group?
No, this is the book. This is page 207 that we're talking about in the Pecha text, the one with the illustrations.
Okay, good. I have that. It's
okay.
Just upstairs. Okay, next week.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So once again, this is the aspirational prayer, which rescues from the dangerous pathways of the intermediate states. So this aspirational prayer or motivational prayer to rescue us from the dangerous pathways of the intermediate states. The intermediate states are the 6 Bardos. So we're all familiar with the 6 Bardos, I hope, it's the Bardo of living or the awakening Bardo. Within that is the Bardo of dreams and the Bardo of meditative concentration. And then the Bardo of death, and then the Bardo of reality, and then the Bardo of becoming, or the Bardo of rebirth. So those are the 6 Bardos. So these are the dangerous pathways. So what that's saying is we are navigating through these 6 pathways, the dangers that lurk in the emotions, in the wisdom misconceptions, or in the habitual tendencies there. So this helps us to remember what our job is, what our work is. So Curtis, will you begin, please?
Yes. Aspirational prayer, which rescues from the dangerous pathways of the intermediate states. I bow down to the spiritual teachers, meditational deities, and dakinis. May I be guided on the path of their great love. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated bewilderment, may the spiritual teachers, holders of the oral lineages, draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant, clear light, which is undistracted study, reflection, and meditation. May the supreme consorts, the host of dakinis, support me from behind, and thus, encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated delusion, may the transcendent Lord Vairocana draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant blue light, which is the pristine cognition of reality's expanse.
May the Supreme Consort, Akasa, Dapfitsvari, support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated aversion, may the transcendent Lord Vajrasattva Ashokbaya draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant white light, which is the mirror-like pristine cognition. May the Supreme Consort, Buddha Lokana, support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated pride, may the transcendent Lord Ratnasambhava draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant yellow light, which is the pristine cognition of sameness.
May the Supreme Consort Mamaki support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated attachment, may the transient Lord Amitabha draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant red light, which is the pristine cognition of discernment. May the Supreme Consort Pandara Vasini support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by the deep-seated envy, may the transient Lord Amoghasiddhi draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant green light, which is the pristine cognition of accomplishment. May the Supreme Consort Samayatara support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha.
Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by the 5 virulent poisons, may the transcendent conquerors, the male Buddhas of the 5 enlightened families, draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant rainbow light, which is the 4 pristine cognitions combined. May the 5 supreme female Buddhas, the purity of the expanse, support me from behind. And thus encircled, may I be rescued from the light paths of the 6 impure classes of beings and be escorted to the 5 utterly supreme and pure Buddha fields. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated habitual tendencies, may the assembly of spiritual heroes and awareness holders draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant, multicolored light, which is co-emergent pristine cognition. May the supreme consorts, the host of dakinis, support me from behind. And thus encircled, May I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha.
Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by the deep-seated, bewildering perceptions, may the assembly of the blood-drinking, wrathful deities draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant, rainbow light, which is free of fear and terrifying perceptions. May the assembly of the Krodeshwari, queens of the expanse, support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Om Ah Hum. May the fields of the five elements not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the fields of the five Buddhas. May the elements of space not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the blue Buddha.
May the elements of water not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the white Buddha. May the fields of earth not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the yellow Buddha. May the fields of fire not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the red Buddha. May the elements of wind not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the green Buddha.
May the awesome sounds, lights, and rays not arise as hostile force. May I see them as the infinite fields of the peaceful and wrathful deities. May the rainbow-colored elements not rise up as a hostile force. May I see them as the fields of the manifold Buddhas. May I recognize all sounds as my own sounds. May I recognize all lights as my own lights. May I recognize all rays as my own rays. May I spontaneously recognize the characteristics of the intermediate states. May the fields of the three Buddha bodies be manifest. Samaya.
Okay, thank you very much. So we go back to page 207. And you notice on the left side of the page are the two illustrations of the 42 peaceful deities, and below that, the 58 wrathful deities. So we pointed that out before. And on the right side of the page is the transcendent Lord Varanchana. So as we proceed along this, each page, as being referenced in the text, you can see that the deity and their consort is being illustrated there. So here we are going through these different phases of the Bardo. And there are these deities to help us, to recognize us, and to pull us and to support us from behind, to move us in the correct direction. Now, this does not happen magically. This is something that happens because we are prepared for this. We visualize this. This is like calling out, identifying, if I can use the word energy, this invisible, forces or whatever of the Dharmakaya that are moving us in the direction of liberation, of purity and so on. So these deities are all within this Sambhogaya, within this meditational frame of deities to be able to help us to do that. So we're developing the recognition of these deities. So right now we have anthropomorphic images of them to help us to remember. And we also have attributes, tools that they might be holding and so on, their activities that they are engaged in, and they also have colors that are represented. As we get more and more and more subtle in this meditation, language begins to fall away. It doesn't matter whether our native language is English or whether it's Tibetan or whether it's Spanish or any other language of the earth, it begins to fall away. And then we start thinking about images of well, what are their tools? What are they holding? You know, what are the mudras? What are their hand positions and so on? And we might be thinking about that because that's something that goes beyond language. And then when that starts to fade away, then we start to think about, well, what about the colors that they represent? What is their body color? And now we're really getting very, very subtle, very rare into this, into the energy now becoming just pure light and at different frequency levels, if you will. So we're seeing blue light, we're seeing white light, we're seeing green light, red light, et cetera, et cetera. And it's getting more and more subtle. So we need to understand what those lights mean. So all this is all what we are learning about in our Buddhist practices, what we're learning about in deity yoga practices. This is all Tantra yoga. Somebody made a point about that. The Vajrayana, this Tantrayana, Tantra yoga, this is all the same, is understanding the practices of what it takes to become a Buddha, to develop the wisdom awareness of the Buddha. The wisdom awareness of the Buddha goes through this process of recognizing all these things and then transcends it all. So we're going through this, we're asking these deities, we're recognizing these deities to help rescue us when we start wandering. Our mind starts wandering. Our ego starts wandering. Jealousy starts coming up. Aversion starts coming up. Hatred starts coming up. Ignorance starts coming up. Jealousy, I said that. Envy, all the different emotions start coming up. So we're asking these deities within ourselves to rescue us from those thoughts, from those non-virtues, so that the thoughts come and they go and we just let them go. So we're seeing all these deities like that as parts of us. They are part of that indescribable, that diamond nature that we have within ourselves. So we begin to become the embodiment of all these things. And then we get, and then it comes to the point where it's talking about the Vidyadhara. You know, we talked about that, those that are revealing our habitual tendencies. And then it talks about the wrathful deities to come and help us when the peaceful deities are not powerful enough, or we're it's not that they're not powerful enough, is that we're too egocentric to allow that pacification to work with us. We need something a little stronger. You know, sometimes we got to be grabbed and sometimes we got to be shaken a little bit. Sometimes it's an event that happens, but sometimes it's a teacher who is coming and saying, hey, you know, you need to wake up a little bit. Adrian, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So how's like karma in the Bardo of death? Is it the wind that is moving you forward? Is that what sorry, not dharma, but karma? Is that what it is considered?
Yeah, it's like the karmic winds.
So we have all this displays of lights, which probably it's our mind displaying all of this emotions and stuff. So how can the deities influence or neutralize the karma that we have and that we bring with us in the Bardo?
It does it in the Bardo of living.
It does it, or it doesn't?
It does it in the Bardo of living.
but not in the Bardo of death.
We can recollect it. We can remember it in the Bardo of death and in the Bardo of reality. We can recall that, and that can save us. Remember, all this is within ourselves. So we can recollect that. But the work is done in the Bardo of living. If you have not done this work in the Bardo of living, and then you go through the Bardo of death and you go into the Bardo of reality, now you're completely subject to those winds of karma. And
So
the only thing that you can do is to be able to recall your practices, to be able to recall that purification, and to liberate you from any further suffering.
Right. So that's where I kind of like want to get to. Basically, our practice is to make imprints, not in our physical body, because we're going to lose this, right, at the time of death.
Right.
But what are we actually making imprints into when we do the practice, so that we can remember this into the Bardo of death and Bardo of reality?
What we are trying to do, remember, we've said many times that we have three bodies: our physical body, our intellectual body, and our spiritual body, right? So what we're trying to do is to get our spiritual body to be as strong as our physical body and our intellectual body seems to be. When our physical body screams at us, we stop everything and we pay attention to it. If our intellectual body gets upset with us, everything stops and we have to pay attention to our intellectual body. And the first thing that suffers from all of those things, well, I shouldn't say suffer, but the first thing that is suppressed is our spiritual body, because it's so subtle. So what we're doing is we're developing our spiritual body to be at least as powerful as the other two bodies, and maybe more powerful because it is transcendent, and to see it in a clear light, to see it in a different way than we have seen it before. Therefore, when we come to the Bardo of death, we don't even recognize that our body, our physical body, has stopped working. We don't even recognize that our brain has stopped working, because we are so immersed. We are the spiritual body. And if we're not liberated because of that, of the awareness of that spiritual body, if we're not liberated right at that time, then we go into the Bardo of reality. And in the Bardo of reality, we can go to these different families, these different Buddha families. So we practice the Poa to get familiar with Buddha Amitabha, because it's the most accessible. So without going into a lot of detail, if we're not prepared to do that, then we have to rely on what we now are being called our mental body, that we revert back now to a mental body in this Bardo of reality. The spiritual body, the spiritual Bardo or the spiritual body, has had its opportunity and it missed the opportunity. But now the mental body can be called upon to remember its practices and teachings so that it can recover and then be rescued. And if it's not, and it has opportunity to do that. And if it doesn't do that, then it gets more and more closer to being born again, to going through the Bardo of becoming. But first, we go through the peaceful deities whose pacification is there to be able to rescue us. But it's powerful, but it's not as powerful when we get to the wrathful deities. Now these wrathful deities are incredibly powerful, and their visualizations are incredibly, and they represent such meaningful things. If that doesn't save us, then we begin to go into, again, the Bardo of becoming again and being reborn. So it's the mental body that we revert to this mental body. If we're not able to stabilize that spiritual body, we revert back to the mental body. Now, we don't remember that. We've been there many times. We've died many times and we've been born many times. We've been there many times. But the more that we engage in these practices, the more that we truly experience profound samadhi, we begin to recall, we begin to remember, not literally all these things in our brain, because all those memories are gone with the body, gone with the brain. But what's left are these karmic imprints. And then we begin to recall those karmic imprints. And that's what we are recognizing. So we have to develop those karmic imprints now. We have to understand all the mental body. We have to look at the subtle enjoyment body to be able to recognize that. So I hope that explains it.
Lance, could I add one little footnote?
Sure.
Which is, in addition, Adrian, to karmic winds, there are two types of winds, karmic winds and wisdom winds. Karmic winds we have no control over, just as Lance is beautifully describing. The wisdom winds are the ones when we're liberated, which we do have control over and are then able to benefit beings and direct our awareness and our help. But winds are of two different kinds.
Thank you, Tammy. I don't think I've heard of that concept, but it makes a lot of sense. It sounds like you would make those winds stronger with a strong practice, I'm assuming. Is that right?
Everything Lance said, I think, speaks directly to that, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're going to explore all this, as we go on. So it's a good question. I'm glad you asked the question. And it's good to be able to put things back and, keep it in this context to be able to see what we're doing. Any other comments or questions?
I have a question, Lance.
Okay.
On page 207, am I right in thinking that the first full paragraph is really one paragraph about the Bardo of living? It's talking about study, reflection, meditation, spiritual teachers, holders of oral lineages. And then from there on, it moves into Bardo of reality with the peaceful and wrathful deities. I hadn't noticed that before, but when we were reading it tonight, I thought, oh, that, except for the mention of the Dakinis, that sounds more like the Bardo of living. And it is, after all, the title says intermediate states, plural. So
Right. It's kind of like an introduction blanket statement to say what the rest of this is. Yes. The more you read this, the more you see these little subtleties.
Yes. Yeah.
So we get to page 211, and then we're saying, Om Ahom, body, speech, and mind, the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha, the three roots, the three jewels, etc. And then may the fields of the five elements not arise as a hostile force. So we're getting down now to this elemental level. We're looking at the elements of water, earth, fire, wind, and space. So we're looking at things at elemental levels now, and may they not be hostile force. So we're dealing with this. We're looking at this. This is part of the brilliance of this practice, is looking at these things in these very fundamental levels of things that we take for granted, but they are represented in the Bardo Thödol. We have to understand what this phenomenal nature is, including the basic elements. And so it goes on and talks about how the different Buddhas are there for us at these different elemental levels and so on. And then it gets to page 213, And now here, this is the essence. This is the most powerful part, I think. It says, may the awesome sounds, lights, and rays not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the infinite fields of the Buddhas, of the peaceful and wrathful deities that are all within us. All this true nature is within us. All these deities are within us. May the rainbow-colored elements not rise up as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the manifold Buddhas, all within us. And then if you look on either side of this page 213, you look on the right side is the illustration of the 42 peaceful deities. On the other side is the 58 wrathful deities. This is what it's talking about. May I recognize all sounds as my own sounds. When we're in this state, it's all our own sounds. May I recognize all lights as my own lights. At this stage, it's all our own. May I recognize all rays as my own rays. We take responsibility for all this. What we are opening ourselves up to, what these appearances are. May I spontaneously recognize the characteristics of the intermediate states. May the fields of the three Buddha bodies be manifest. Samaya. So samaya, sama is the vows that we take. And the samaya is the vow taker. I take this vow. So that's it for tonight on the book. And we'll continue next week with some more. Any more brief questions? And then we'll do our dedication prayers.
Yes, Lance.
Yes, Dan.
Are we to take some sections currently in the book and do them as a daily recitation?
Well, exactly what we're doing here. Yes.
Yeah.
So going back to, do you have a copy of this book?
I do.
All right. So go back to the very beginning to the table of contents.
Yeah.
So if you look at the first part of the table of contents where it says page 1, the root verses of the 6 intermediate states, and then page 7, the 10 branch prayer. So those 2 prayers, and then skip up to the next page of the table of contents to the bottom where it says the concluding daily prayers. It says the aspirational prayer that rescues from the dangerous pathways, page 207.
Yeah.
And the next one is page 214 that we haven't gone over yet. But those are the 4 daily prayers.
Okay.
So that's what Baba has requested that we all practice, or that we all recite every day. And they're transformative.
Can you visualize as well? Recite and visualize?
Well, of course, yes. So some of this is going to be new. Some of it we haven't explained, or some of it, we've just talked about it, but haven't gone in deeper. So you may not understand it all, but that shouldn't keep you from getting familiar with the prayers. And then as an outer thing, and then we'll fill in the inner meanings, and then you'll begin to have your secret meanings. You'll begin to have your secret experiences with these things. So this is the book of living and dying. So while we're living, we need to prepare ourselves for our dying. Makes sense, doesn't it?
And I do have a short question too.
Okay.
So let's see, I think it's page 212. When it talks about the elements of water, elements of earth, fire, wind,
yes,
does that refer to the dissolution of those elements at the time of the death, or somehow after?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
for however long the conceptual is with us. You
I'm
know,
sorry. Say it again.
for however long we are a mental body. You know, if we can become a spiritual body, it's non-conceptual. These things go away.
Makes sense. And the hostile force is not necessarily manifested into a wrathful deity, but what does exactly mean hostile force here?
That it takes over. You know, that we become enslaved by our conceptual thoughts. So from that point of view, we can say that they are hostile towards our liberation.
And as we'll see, Adrian, when we go further, these elements exist on the three levels, the three Kaya levels. And so the hostile force, as Lance is saying, when we don't understand their inner level and secret level meanings, and we don't recognize them at anything beyond the gross material level, then they trip us up. They become obscurations.
That makes sense.
Okay. Let's
Lance?
move on. Yes.
Excuse me, one question. The red prayer book that we got, is that the collection of the daily prayers?
Yes. There is a book like that. If anybody wants it, I've got a book like this, which is a consolidation of these 4 prayers in one book form. So if you would like this, write me an email and I will be happy to send it to you.
No.
So
Lance.
it's just, so maybe some of you might already have it because I made it available to people at different times and so on. So, but I'll be happy to send it to you if you request it.
Just one more short question.
All right.
So do these prayers, does it matter that much if you recite them in like a more formal practice session, sitting on the cushion, or can you go like throughout the day, memorize them and go through it?
Whenever you can be mindful about it.
I know what you're always saying, like, you know, you always need to practice mindfulness. And I'm trying to do that with everything that I do throughout the day. It's a little bit of hardship for me to find the time to do more, like, you know, sit down type of practice sometimes.
Well, you know, I appreciate, you know, what you're saying. You know, I've certainly been through that. I'm retired now, so, you know, I'm not working, but when I was working and everything, what I found I could do was I could prioritize each day in my week and do certain things on certain days so that I'm not obligating myself to think that I have to do everything every day. But if I create this circle of practices for myself, just like the circle of teachings that we receive over and over again, that if I do these practices with complete undivided mindfulness in this circular fashion, that I accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish and not jeopardizing, you know, other things that are going on in my life, you know, that need attention. You know, we have to be practical. So my point is to create a system of practices that you can really be mindful about on a regular basis. I hope that explains that idea to you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this is why we talk, you know, this is what the Sangha is about. You know, none of us have all the answers for everybody. All we have are our own experiences. So we share those openly with generosity and take it for whatever it means to you. If you can use it, then fine. If you can't use it, that's okay. You know, maybe somebody else is going to use it. Maybe nobody's going to use it. but that's part of Sangha. That's part of opening yourself up to these things. And what that means is not holding it back. Sometimes we always think, oh, I'm not worthy enough, and I don't have the wisdom, I don't have the skillful means. But this is how we overcome that, by sharing this and by seeing these things. There's no wrong answers. So it's important to be able to open ourselves up to that.
Lance, may I comment on opening up?
Yes.
Because I think that realizations, whether in a dream state or an awake state, come haphazardly, and we're not prepared for them.
Well, I can say, well, we're not prepared for them. I don't know about the haphazard part.
We can't be attached to them either, but they do come. The more subtle, energetic level we exist on.
Yes. Yeah. So again, if we hold that too close, it can add to our emotions. But if we open ourselves up and try and understand these things and share these things, sometimes it's like a huge weight being lifted off of our shoulders. So, we're here on Friday nights, but that doesn't mean that we can't talk during the week on the phone or through a Zoom or something like that. And to, maybe you got a friend in the group or whomever, just reach out and say, hey, can I talk? That's what we're trying to do, establish relationships here. By the end of, we may take a year doing this. And I would imagine that we're all going to get to know each other a whole lot better by the end of this year that we're doing this. Maybe it's going to be more than a year. Maybe we'll just keep on doing it until we start reading it for each other, because one of us is going to die. One of them, maybe, it's all going to happen. I request that you all read it for me. I'll read it for you. We have to think in those terms.
I would like to request prayers for Audrey. Sorry, Adrian. I have a friend. I took the call of her husband. Anyway, Audrey died, and I spoke with Mari at the beginning of the practice tonight, which is why I was gone for about 10 minutes. But his wife is died 2 days ago.
Okay, well, when we at the conclusions, keep Audrey in mind. Where does she live? Where was she from?
She is in Portsmouth, Virginia.
Right, well,
they
now
posted
she's
Drupon
in the
before.
Bardo. So here's one person that we specifically can, from our heart, to the Bardo where she is, that we can send light to her when we recite these dedication prayers and when we recite Om Mani Padme Hum, which we'll do. So with that, Debbie, I'm going to give you the ball, and if you'll do the dedication prayers, please. If there's any other thoughts, just write them down and we'll talk about it next time, or you can email and we can talk about it, please.
You're muted, Debbie.
Excuse me.
All right, please.
Emaho. In the center.
We're not seeing it. We're not seeing it on the,
Oh, it says I'm sharing. Hold on 1 minute. I'll try it again.
you're sharing, but you're sharing a Zoom page.
Try this again. Here we go. I think you'll see it now.
There you go.
There.
Everybody should recite this. Turn your microphones off, but everybody should recite it out loud.
Emaho. In the center is the marvelous Buddha Amitabha of boundless light. On the right side is Avalokiteshvara, the Lord of great compassion. On the left is Vajrapani, the Lord of powerful means. All are surrounded by limitless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immeasurable peace and happiness is the blissful, pure land of Dewa Chen. When I and all beings pass from samsara, may we be born in Dewa Chen without taking samsaric rebirth. May I have the blessing of meeting Amitabha face to face. By the power and the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, may I attain this aspiration without hindrance. Tayata Pensadriya Awa Bodhanaye Soha. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. By this virtue, may I achieve all knowingness by defeating all enemies' confusion. May all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of suffering. As Manjushri the warrior realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings.
Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Om Ahum. Om Ahum. Om Ahum. My body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Adrian,
Thank
before
you
you
all.
go, check chat. There's a message for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lance. Thanks, Deb.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Lance,
everyone.
These Friday nights are very special.